I had been with my boyfriend for 3 years. I found that the names of all his social media accounts were July. I thought he had a deep love for the romantic month of July, so I didn't dig deeper into it. It wasn't until the day of our wedding that his ex-girlfriend sent a gift, and the name signed at the bottom of the gift box was Joyce. I finally realized that he didn't love July. He was deeply in love with Joyce. At that moment, my heart sank to the bottom. At my wedding with Ryan, a girl in a white dress had too much to drink. Ryan had a dark look on his face and told her not to make a scene. She ignored Ryan and instead smiled at me. "Sister, I heard that you're pregnant. Have you decided on a name for the baby?" I stroked my belly and replied gently, "The baby's nickname is July." "July?" Her gaze turned to Ryan. And she laughed even harder. There were even tears at the corners of her eyes. "How can you call the baby Julie? He doesn't want July anymore." My expression froze slightly. And I was a bit confused. In the stagnant air, Ryan's childhood friend was the first to break the silence. "Sister-in-law. My classmate is drunk. I'll send her to the hotel." After they left, I couldn't hold back and asked Ryan. My tone a bit tentative, "Ryan? Who is she?" Ryan looked at me intently. And there was no sign of anything unusual in his expression. "An old classmate." I wanted to ask more. But he changed the subject first. "Honey, the client of my company is drunk. I'm going to check on him." "Okay." I opened my mouth with difficulty and swallowed all the words I wanted to ask. I don't know why, but looking at his flustered back as he left, I felt an inexplicable sense of unease in my heart. When my best friend Yo-Yo came to see me, she was holding a delicate gift box in her hand. She threw the gift box in front of me and spoke quite bluntly, "Chloe, this is what your love rival left behind." Love rival? My heart skipped a beat. And I subconsciously thought of the girl in the white dress. And my face turned even paler. "It's the girl who was crying so pitifully just now." Yo-Yo puffed out her cheeks and rolled her eyes. "She's so shameless to cry like that in front of someone else's groom." After hearing this, I felt even more uneasy. Yo-Yo patted my shoulder comfortingly. Her tone extremely confident, "Don't worry. Your Ryan is a well-known wife-spoiling fanatic. He would never do anything to betray you." "That's true. Ryan has doted on me to the core. Everyone says that I married for love. I shouldn't doubt him." I let out a long sigh and decided not to look for trouble. While chatting with Yo-Yo, I unconsciously played with the gift box. Suddenly, the name on the gift box caught my attention. I examined it carefully and found that her name was Joyce. Wait a minute. Joyce. July. The string in my head suddenly snapped. I opened my mouth in a daze. And my straight back couldn't help but slump. My world suddenly went dark. "Chloe. Why are you crying? Don't scare me. Where's Ryan? Help me find Ryan. I want to see him. I want to see him." Okay. I'll find Ryan. You're still carrying a baby. You can't cry anymore." I handed my phone to Yo-Yo with trembling hands. I was desperate to know where Ryan was. And my voice was shaking uncontrollably. "I want to have a video call with him." Yo-Yo nodded. As soon as the video call was dialed, Ryan hung up. I tightly gripped the hem of my veil, tilted my head back, but the tears fell uncontrollably. "Dial him again for me." After the video call was hung up countless times, Ryan finally made a voice call. His voice was a bit hoarse. "Honey. What's wrong with you? Where are you?" By this time, I couldn't hold back my emotions anymore. "I'm at." He hesitated for half a second and changed the subject. "I'll be back soon." I almost hysterically asked, "Are you at the hotel? You went to find her, didn't you?" I could hardly continue speaking. I leaned against the wall helplessly. With a heavy nasal tone, "Ryan, tell me, who is Joyce?" There was suddenly no sound on the other end of the phone. I covered my chest and cried wildly, sobbing until I was out of breath, and in the end, I couldn't even shed any more tears. I felt so pathetic. On my wedding day, my husband's first love showed up. And he left me to go to the hotel with her. What's even more pathetic is that I have been with Ryan for 3 years. The names of all his social media accounts are July. Even after I got pregnant and asked him what our baby's name should be, He blurted out without thinking, July. Although I was curious about what special significance this month held for him, but I respected him and didn't dig deeper. It wasn't until today that I found out that his first love's name is Joyce. How could he use our child to pay tribute to their love with a clear conscience? What am I in Ryan's heart? What on earth is my 3 years with him? I don't understand. If his heart wasn't cleared, why did he want to be with me? What did I do wrong? Half an hour later, Ryan burst into the private room, sweating profusely. He asked Jude to leave, wanting to talk to me alone. What do you want to talk to me about? I raised my red eyes and looked at him blankly. He squatted in front of me, showing no emotion. Joyce is my ex-girlfriend. How long were you together? 7 years. How long have you been apart? For years. Do you still love her? Ryan didn't say a word. He defaulted. I just wanted to laugh. And the more I laughed, the more tears I shed. Why are you two doing this? She can't let go of you and came to disrupt my wedding. You can't let go of her and left me to find her. Ryan, what on earth did I do wrong to be treated like this by the two of you? I cried and tore up my veil. Stop making a scene. Okay? Ryan pursed his lips and held down my hand. Nothing happened between me and her. I just went to check on her. I stared at him with wide eyes. I didn't know how he could say such a thing so matter-of-factly. Is it true that as long as she cries in the future, you'll leave me and go to her? I asked hysterically. Ryan fell silent again. I don't know how long it took before I heard his voice. I will marry you. Just pretend that this never happened. My eyes went dark. It was like a thunderbolt had struck above my head, and it hurt like needles. Then a huge wave of anger welled up in my heart. Did he think that the wedding was a favor to me? I don't care. I really don't care. I staggered backward and fell against the wall. My face pale and cold sweat breaking out all over my body. The baby in my belly seemed to sense my pain. He moved slightly, but it made me feel excruciating pain. I covered my belly, filled with sorrow. This is your first fetal movement, baby. Why did it have to be at this moment? Ryan frowned and reached out to help me up. I uncontrollably screamed at him, don't touch me. You're dirty. Don't be like this. Okay? Ryan stared at my belly and sighed. I don't want to break up with you. Really? I felt disgusted when I heard this. He was so disgusting. If I hadn't met him, I would have had a clean and pure love. I could have been happy too. He destroyed me. I picked up my phone and threw it at him regardless. The wedding is off. Let's go get a divorce right now. Ryan was stunned. But 2 seconds later, his face clearly turned cold. And his words were full of sarcasm. You come from a single-parent family. Do you think your mother will agree to you getting a divorce while you're pregnant? I never expected that Ryan would use my family to hurt me. My heart seemed to be torn into thousands of pieces by a sharp knife. Each piece was being gnawed at, eroded, and pierced. I leaned against the wall, holding my head, and burst into tears until my throat was hoarse. I didn't even notice when he left. After that day, Ryan and I completely entered a cold war. I moved back to my own home. As Ryan said, I grew up in a single-parent family. Before my father passed away, my mother had been living a marriage like that of a widow, so she couldn't empathize with me. When Ryan came to pick me up, she couldn't wait for me to go back. Ryan has given you a way out. Take the opportunity and stop being stubborn. My mother kept urging me. Don't hide in the room. Come out quickly. I almost begged her, Mom. Please ask him to leave. You're already pregnant. What are you still making a fuss about? You have to swallow this humiliation. I can't swallow it. I really can't. Marriage is about turning a blind eye to some things. She lifted the quilt and met my red eyes. Her tone softened a bit. Besides, Ryan didn't cheat on you. It's not like that. Emotional infidelity is even more terrifying than physical infidelity. My tone was extremely sad. We've been together for 3 years. But when he's sleeping next to me, he's thinking of another woman. What am I? You just think too much. I'm telling you in advance that no matter how you two fight, don't even think about getting a divorce. I can't afford to lose face. This was the first time I defied her. I must get a divorce. My mother looked at me with a look of disappointment. After all, it's your own fault, isn't it? If you were perfect in every way, I don't believe Ryan would still be thinking about his ex. Mom, I interrupted her, feeling devastated, covering my ears. I didn't want to hear any more. Please stop. I'm begging you. Endless grievances quickly spread in my heart, and the tears welled up in my eyes and couldn't be held back. It's not my fault. Why are you blaming me? Does the world really have to be so absurd? I was forced to go home with Ryan. In our wedding chamber, he handed me his phone and said, "Check it yourself." I haven't contacted her since we broke up. I didn't take it and sneered. Does this mean you don't have her in your heart? Ryan didn't answer. He clenched his phone tightly, his knuckles protruding sharply and turning white from the force. After a long while, he opened WeChat with a solemn face and searched for Joyce's name. The latest message was in the classmate group. He said, "I'm getting married." His classmates, as if sharing a telepathic connection, asked, "Why didn't Joyce tell us?" He replied, "It's not with her." The group fell silent immediately. A few minutes passed, and Joyce mentioned him in the group. "Congratulations. I definitely won't miss your wedding." He didn't refuse. He even said, "Okay." On our wedding day, Joyce came. She was wearing a white wedding dress and sitting in the audience, looking just like a bride. Ryan, who was standing beside me taking the oath, choked up several times and could hardly hold back his emotions. At that time, my best friend envied me and said, "Chloe, you've married the right person." Ryan actually cried during the wedding oath. He's so affectionate. Looking back now, I can't help but want to laugh. Ryan's acting skills are really excellent. Everyone thought that when he was taking the oath, he was thinking about all the years he had spent with me. But in fact, he was clearly worried about Joyce, who was crying her eyes out in the audience. Have you seen clearly? I told you. I have a clean relationship with Joyce. Ryan's voice pulled me back to reality. I closed my eyes and was just about to tell him to get out when a call from his childhood friend came in. On the other end of the phone, his childhood friend's voice was very urgent. "Ryan, Joyce has been admitted to the hospital." Ryan's body stiffened, and he looked at me with a complicated expression. "I'm going out for a while. We're not divorced yet." How could he blatantly go to see another woman? I grabbed his arm like a madwoman. "Ryan, I won't allow you to go." Ryan pinched the bridge of his nose irritably, and said in a reproachful tone, "Can't you be as sensible as you used to be? Why have you become so unreasonable?" I turned around, pushed the door open, and told him to get out. As soon as Ryan left, I received a strange text message. "Chloe, Ryan doesn't love you. Please give him back to me. It hurts me more than F to see him get married." To be honest, before receiving this text message, I had never blamed Joyce. I only hated Ryan, hated his heartlessness, and hated that he built his love for one woman on the pain of another woman. But now, looking at the text message in front of me, I realized that they were of the same kind, equally disgusting and equally selfish. Since they love each other so much, they should be locked together and not come out to harm others. However, before I officially divorce Ryan, Joyce is a mistress who can't show her face in the open. A mistress has no right to be arrogant in front of the legal wife. Holding back my nausea, I made sarcastic remarks about her. "Joyce, what were you doing earlier? Do you really like other people's husbands so much?" She quickly replied, "Ryan and I have been in love for 7 years. When it comes to being a mistress, I don't count. Moreover, it's the one who isn't loved that's the mistress." According to her way of thinking, she thinks that I destroyed her 7-year relationship with Ryan? Is she really that shameless? I didn't believe that a person could be so shameless until she bombarded me with text messages. "Stop clinging to Ryan. Do you believe that as long as I want him, he will appear by my side at any time?" She kept provoking me. "Chloe, divorce him. You know very well that you can't compete with me." But I never intended to compete with her. When I knew that there was another woman in Ryan's heart, there was only one thought left in my heart: divorce and divide the property. A man who is already tainted. If she wants him, I'll give him to her. After blocking Joyce, I called my best friend Yo-Yo and said, Yo-Yo, can you accompany me to the hospital? You don't sound right. Are you sick? I'll come to your place. Yo-Yo rushed to my home without delay. She arrived in less than 20 minutes. The moment I opened the door, she was obviously shocked. What's happened to you these days? Why have you let yourself go like this? I told her the whole story about Ryan and Joyce completely. There was no change in my expression. And my tone was as natural as if I were telling someone else's story. I just didn't expect that this story would be so tragic that it made Yo-Yo cry on the spot. She told me with a sobbing voice. Chloe. It's Ryan and that bitch who are at fault. They will get their comeuppance. You've done nothing wrong. And you still have a bright future ahead of you. I didn't want to cry anymore. But when Yo-Yo comforted me, I couldn't help but shed tears again. I covered my face with a tissue and said with a thick nasal voice. I made an appointment for this afternoon. It's time to go to the hospital. Yo-Yo gently touched my swollen belly and almost burst into tears. The baby is already 5 months old. My heart ached like being stabbed. And tears fell onto my belly one by one. I'm sorry. Baby. I'm really sorry. Mom can't keep you. When we got to the hospital, after all the examinations were done, the doctor hesitated for a long time and asked me, the baby has already taken shape. Are you sure you don't want it? I was afraid that the baby would be sad if it could hear. So I softly said, yes. The doctor nodded and asked me to lie on the cold operating table. The steel needle was slowly pushed into my tailbone. After the injection, my consciousness gradually blurred. When I woke up again, I was in the ward. Yo-Yo told me that the baby had been aborted. Although I had already mentally prepared myself, when I touched my now flattened belly, I still felt as if a huge hole had been torn in my body. And the cold wind kept blowing in, making me shiver all over. How could I not be in pain when the baby I had carried for 5 months was aborted? I felt as if I had lost a part of my life. I didn't even dare to think about it. As soon as I thought of the baby, my heart felt as if it was being stabbed fiercely by a needle. And the pain made my tears splash out. But baby, Mom can't give you happiness. Please don't blame Mom. Mom hopes that in your next life, you will be born into a happy and harmonious family. Someone will dote on you and love you. You will have a worry-free life. Live a long life. To be 100 years old. When Yo-Yo handed me the phone, she said, while you were having the operation, Ryan called several times. I didn't answer. I nodded and indiferently blocked Ryan. Leaning against the hospital bed, my consciousness gradually cleared up. The baby wasn't just mine. Ryan was also responsible for it. Now that the baby was gone, how could I hide it from him? I weakly called Yo-Yo. Help me put the operation record and the medical record book together and give them to Ryan. Just tell him that I'm returning his July to him. Yo-Yo agreed. After hesitating for a while, she finally summoned up the courage to ask me, do you want to put the baby in there too? My heart tightened, and tears streamed down my face. I just want Ryan to suffer for the rest of his life. My baby. I hope he can rest in peace. After Ryan received my gift box, it was said that he lay in bed at home for a week. A week later, he came to Yo-Yo's house to settle the score with me. Yo-Yo opened the door and let him look at me and calculate slowly. He walked in aggressively, but after taking a casual glance at me, his fierce expression froze instantly. Looking at me, who was barely breathing, he opened his mouth but couldn't say a word for a long time. He took deep breaths continuously. His jaw muscles kept moving. After calming down for a while, he finally spoke, but his voice was a little shaky. Do you hate me so much? You'd rather ruin yourself like this than have a baby for me? I nodded calmly without any extra words, yes. After hearing this, he turned his face away and stopped looking at me. I remember that Ryan really liked children. The day he found out I was pregnant, he picked me up from the ground and spun me around several times. He, who had never done any housework before, would even cook nutritious meals for me according to the recipe. In the early stages of pregnancy, I couldn't stop vomiting. It was him who searched for all kinds of folk remedies on the internet and accompanied me to try them one by one until I felt better. Later, As my pregnancy progressed and my belly gradually swelled, he would accompany me for a walk every day because he heard that walking more would make childbirth less painful. I would laugh at him and say, "How do you, a man, know all this?" He said, "Honey, since you're willing to have a baby for me, it shows that you love me to the extreme. I will definitely treat you well." He also said, "Honey, I will treat you well for the rest of my life." Unexpectedly, a lifetime was so short. As soon as Joyce appeared, this so-called lifetime ended. Thinking of these things, my eyes feel a bit sore. But it's just a bit sore. I know very well that these were all lies he weaved for me. No matter how beautiful the lies are, they can never become true. He has his Joyce, and I have my own path to follow. I said casually, "Tomorrow, I'll send you the divorce agreement." He turned around in disbelief, with a hint of anger between his eyebrows. "Are you in such a hurry?" I remained silent, choosing to acquiesce. He laughed out of anger, his hands trembling a bit, and his voice also trembling. "Are you really so heartless? You can just say you don't love me anymore?" It was rare to see such an expression on him. So I also smiled, because my values don't allow me to look for a man in the garbage dump. After saying this, I felt an unprecedented sense of relief. Ryan stood there, frozen in place. I glanced at Yo-Yo, and she understood my meaning. She quickly opened the door and drove him out. Yo-Yo was afraid that Ryan would affect my mood, so she hovered around me like a little sparrow, chattering to distract my attention. "Chloe, I need to confess something to you." "What's up?" "The day you asked me to send the gift box to Ryan, although I didn't put the baby in it, I printed a bunch of baby photos and stuffed them in." Ryan was stunned when he opened the gift box. Yo-Yo poked her head out to look at me. "Chloe, you won't blame me, will you? He's also the baby's father. It's okay for him to see the baby. That's what you can say. But I'm just afraid that he will make things difficult for you during the divorce." I should have held back, she said. I was calmer than I expected. "I'll find a way to get evidence of his infidelity. He won't be able to make things difficult for me." Yo-Yo tilted her head and looked at me. Suddenly, she smiled and said slowly, "Chloe, pedantral filled my sigh. I think you've changed. I know that to deal with a scumbag, you can only become stronger. It's a good thing. A really good thing." Although she said it was a good thing, her eyes were turning red. Maybe because I've experienced so many things recently. I've thought more clearly than ever before. I patted her shoulder and smiled at her. "Don't be sad for me. I prefer to face the wind and rain and take control of my own life rather than be a flower in a greenhouse." A week later, I sent the divorce agreement that had been carefully checked by the lawyer to Ryan. I waited for several days in a row, but I didn't receive the signed agreement from him. I had no choice but to remove him from my blacklist. I found his phone number and dialed it. He picked up the phone in just 1 second. "Wife." I didn't expect him to still call me that. I was dazed for half a second, then frowned and asked, "Ryan, is there any problem with the divorce agreement?" "No." "When will you sign it?" "Another day." "When is another day?" On the other end of the phone, the sound of a lighter could be heard. After about half a minute, he slowly said, "Do you really have to get a divorce?" I didn't quite understand what he was thinking. We no longer have a child, and there is no more tie between us. What on earth is he hesitating about? My tone wasn't very friendly. "It's really annoying to keep asking this question." Ryan sneered and said through gritted teeth, "Fine." Before I knew it, another week passed, and I still hadn't received the signed divorce agreement from Ryan. On the other hand, Joyce kept harassing me, forcing me to leave Ryan as soon as possible. Since she insisted on being annoying, I had no need to indulge her. I said, "I sent the divorce agreement to Ryan last month, but he doesn't want to sign it. What should I do?" Joyce didn't believe me. She wrote a short essay to prove Ryan's love for her. Ryan and I got together when we were in university. The year we graduated was the hardest time for us. We squeezed into a narrow rented room. Even when we only had a bowl of fried rice to eat and drank only hot water, I didn't feel it was bitter. He was really good to me. He spoiled me just like he would spoil a child. Every time it was a festival or my birthday, he would prepare a bouquet of flowers for me. and there was never a lack of gifts. After we lived together, he would cook breakfast and wait for me to wake up in the morning. In the evening, he would prepare hot water for me to soak my feet, and he took care of all the housework. All his friends knew about me because all his social media accounts were named July. And July is equivalent to Joyce. He also told his friends that if he didn't marry Joyce in the future, they didn't need to come to the wedding. Even my parents said that I had found the best man in the world. If we hadn't broken up, how could you have been able to marry him? He doesn't love you. Let him go. After reading it, I found that there wasn't the slightest bit of anger in my heart. I even thought she was pitiful. She thought that the love Ryan gave her was unique, but she didn't know. Ryan had done these things for me too. The reason I was willing to marry Ryan in the first place was precisely because he was so good to me. Wasn't it? I didn't want to take my anger out on her anymore, and my tone was quite polite. Fine. I'll go to talk to him about the divorce in person today. Less than a second after I sent the text message, my phone rang immediately. I answered it. On the other end of the phone was Joyce's shrill voice. Chloe, are you being cheap? Don't seduce Ryan. You're not allowed to see him. If I don't force him to sign the agreement, you'll never be able to see the light of day. I don't believe it's him who won't sign. You must have played some tricks. What on earth did you do to him? Joyce was almost hysterical. I deliberately mocked her. Instead of coming to me and losing your temper, you might as well force him. Didn't you say he loves you very much? If he loves you, how could he bear to let you be the mistress? After hearing this, Joyce hung up the phone immediately. I sighed. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilled Sashim. I had an epiphany in time and didn't become like her. After recuperating at Yo-Yo's place for more than a month, I returned to the company. Perhaps the blow from my marriage was too great. I no longer looked forward to love but threw myself wholeheartedly into my work. My colleagues were curious and couldn't help asking, Chloe, why have you been working overtime so often recently? Does your husband allow you to work this hard? I paused my pen, raised my head, and answered calmly, I'm suing for a divorce. The colleagues around me quickly gathered around, all looking surprised. You two were so close before. How can you get a divorce just like that? I don't understand those big principles. I only know that when I can no longer love, I should let go. Internal friction will only destroy myself. I didn't want to talk too much about my private life with my colleagues, so I just smiled and took the opportunity to change the subject. My colleague sighed a few times and didn't ask any more questions. After work in the evening, a colleague ran towards me with a gossipy look on his face. Chloe, your husband is waiting for you downstairs in the company. I didn't want to see him. I walked to the left window and opened the window. The sky was dim and yellow. Against the light of the setting sun, I couldn't see his expression clearly. I could only see that his head was slightly lowered and his body was slightly bent forward. There was an indescribable sense of loneliness. I casually took a photo and sent it to Joyce. Even without any extra words. Joyce was so angry, and she was like a cat with its fur standing on end. Because the next second, I saw Ryan answering the phone. I don't know what they said. Ryan raised his phone high, as if he was going to throw it on the ground. In an instant, he raised his head and glanced in my direction. Our eyes met. He stood there stupidly, as tense as a fully drawn bow. I curved my lips and smiled brightly at him. Half an hour later, I received a WeChat message from Joyce. It had both text and pictures. The text said, Chloe, don't be complacent. I told you long ago that as long as I need him, he can leave everything behind and come to me. In the picture, Ryan was leaning against the window with a cigarette in his mouth, and the smoke was so thick that his expression couldn't be seen clearly. When we first got together, he also loved smoking very much. After I got pregnant, for the sake of the baby, he voluntarily quit smoking. He said that he had developed a smoking habit when his life was dark and hopeless. He also said that once he quit this time, no matter how difficult it was in the future, he wouldn't start smoking again. I pulled my thoughts back and replied to her deliberately. Is this something to show off? It's not like he slept with you. Joyce was so angry with me that she was speechless. A few days later, There was an annual meeting in Ryan's company. And Joyce sent me another photo. He brought me to the company's annual meeting. We got back together. Oh, come to think of it, I had helped Ryan a lot when he succeeded in starting his own business. 3 years ago. In the initial stage of Ryan's business startup, there was a problem with the capital turnover. It was me who borrowed 1 million yuan from Yo-Yo to help him get through the difficult time. Later, during the development stage of the company, I accompanied him to socialize at the dinner table. All the employees in the company knew that Ryan's wife was me. When Joyce openly held Ryan's arm and appeared at the annual meeting, it was inevitable that some people would gossip. At this time, the vice president of the company specifically came to chat with me. Sister-in-law, why haven't I seen you come to the company recently? I've been a bit busy recently, I replied, pretending not to know anything. I see. Sister-in-law, I saw that there was a woman beside President Ryan. I don't know if she's his sister. What woman? Can you send me a picture of her? Is that okay? I'm afraid President Ryan will blame me if he finds out. Don't worry. I definitely won't tell him. After hesitating for a long time, Vice President's son finally sent me a group photo of Ryan and Joyce. Are there any more? Vice President's son took several more photos in succession. In the first photo, Joyce put her arm around Ryan's neck and took a selfie with him intimately. Ryan's eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and he seemed to have drunk too much. In the second photo, Joyce sat on Ryan's lap. In the third photo, Joyce fell into his arms. Very good. They were intimate enough. I didn't expect that Joyce would be so crazy. She sent me a photo of condoms. Who said Ryan wouldn't touch me? See. He did touch me. This photo was so dirty that I couldn't even open my eyes. After a long while, I asked, just based on this picture, why should I believe that this is Ryan? Soon, a photo of a bare-chested man was sent from the other side. Afraid that she would retract it, I quickly saved it. In the photo, Ryan had his eyes tightly closed, and Joyce's white hand was pressed against his lips. The atmosphere was overly ambiguous. Very good. This was exactly the evidence of infidelity that I wanted. I printed 3 copies of all the photos that Joyce and Vice President's son had given me. I sent 1 copy to Ryan, 1 copy to the court, and the other copy to my mother. I sued Ryan in court for infidelity during the marriage and demanded that he leave the marriage with nothing. The court accepted the case quickly. On the day Ryan received the court summons, he contacted me using his childhood friend's phone. I've seen the photos. Since we were once husband and wife, there's no need for us to make a scene. If you want a divorce, I agree. Okay. How will the property be divided? I'll give you the bank card and the marital house. We'll split the company's equity equally. No. I want 51 of the equity. He was like an eggplant beaten by frost, completely lacking vitality. He agreed to everything I said. Fine. Consider it as my compensation to you and the baby. Immediately, I hung up the phone. A week later, I officially divorced Ryan, after he transferred the equity to me. The next day, I sold 49 of the equity to Vice President's son. In the company, Vice President's son and Ryan now have the same amount of shares. They are in a position of equal confrontation and can check and balance each other. And the 2 of the equity in my hand can change the ownership of the company at any time. Holding this 2 of the equity in my hand is equivalent to holding Ryan's hard work. As long as Ryan makes me unhappy, I'll give this 2 of the equity to Vice President's son. From then on, Ryan no longer had the courage to provoke me. I don't know why. But even though I'm already divorced, Joyce still keeps pestering me like a ghost. She scolded me without any reason. Chloe, you're so shameless. Why do you deserve to get so much property from Ryan? I replied, Ryan is willing to give it to me. This made her extremely angry. Ryan gave you the money out of guilt for the dead child, not because he has feelings for you. It's all your fault for being so vicious. You used the baby's photos to scare him. I sent her a final message. It's not me who's vicious, but you too. I blocked her again. I officially bid farewell to the messy past. Finally, having fulfilled my life became peaceful. When Yo-Yo came to visit me at my villa, she revealed a secret to me. After you divorced Ryan, he called me. What did he want from you? Yo-Yo rested her chin in her hand and recalled. He said. After Chloe had an abortion. When I went to see her. She was lying in bed like a body without a soul. It seemed like she could die at any moment. At that moment. I was really scared. I won't contact her anymore. Please take good care of her for me. Yo-Yo cursed him. You're so annoying. Late affection is cheaper than grass. Get as far away as you can and don't bother us. After hearing this, I smiled with a sigh. As the saying goes, what you can't get is always restless. One day, I met Ryan's childhood friend on the street. He greeted me, sister-in-law. Joyce didn't marry Ryan. Joyce is really difficult to deal with. Whenever Ryan doesn't go along with her, she threatens to cut her wrists. Ryan is really scared of her. I didn't want to listen to what he said next. I gave him a cold look and said, what does that have to do with me? Leave me alone. Let them torture each other for the rest of their lives. I'll be happy on my own. Extra chapter, I haven't been home since I had a big fight with my mom last time. Divorce is not a trivial matter, and I have to tell her about it. I went back home on Sunday. I searched around the house, but she didn't seem to be at home. So I asked the neighbor, Auntie, do you know where my mom is gone? The auntie pointed ahead and said, go and check on the street. She must be selling oranges there. I couldn't help but frown. Why is my mom selling oranges in the cold winter? I walked quickly towards the street. At the corner, I saw my mom arguing with a strong man while holding oranges. You young man. You've already eaten 2 of my oranges. How can you not buy them? So what if I ate a couple? I don't want to buy them. So I won't. Don't try to morally kidnap me or force me to buy them. My mom grabbed the corner of his clothes and shouted, how can you bully an old person? I think you old women are crazy for money. I ate 2 of your oranges. And you just won't let it go. Right? Seeing that the strong man was about to push my mom, I quickly ran over to stop him. But he changed the topic first. As the strong man met my cold gaze, he cursed and walked away. My mom was still complaining nonstop. These young people nowadays are so uneducated. They don't buy anything but still want to eat others' things. That's enough. Why are you arguing with the young man? Can your old body withstand being pushed by others? If I hadn't come early, I might have seen you in the hospital. My mom lowered her head and didn't say anything. She picked up the oranges that the strong man had knocked over one by one, wiped them on her clothes, and put them back into the basket. Looking at her red hands from the cold, I became even angrier. It's so cold today. Why don't you stay at home and sell these stupid oranges? She stopped what she was doing and murmured, I need to make money. What money are you making? Haven't I given you money regularly? She looked up at me and said, you're divorced and have no one to rely on. I don't know what will happen to you in the future. I need to save more money for you. I've suffered for most of my life. And I know how hard it is to live alone. My heart ached. And tears slowly rolled down my face. She is really a stubborn old lady. She stubbornly believes that divorce is a difficult and bad thing. In fact, divorce is not the opposite of marriage. Marriage is for happiness. So is divorce. The end.